He talked trash against us, talked trash with against.
He was never supposed to become a legend. Not from a forgotten corner of Indiana. Not from a town so small. The world didn't even know its name. But greatness has a way of rising from places no one expects. Before he ever stepped onto an NBA court, before the lights, before the banners, before the world called him Larry Legend, there was just a quiet, stubborn kid from French Lick, a boy who used basketball not for fame, but for survival. A boy who shoveled gravel for pennies. A boy who dribbled on cracked pavement because there was nowhere else to play. A boy who carried the weight of a family struggling to stay together until the day tragedy struck. And childhood ended far too soon. Yet from that pain emerged one of the fiercest competitors the sport has ever seen. How did someone with no money, no connections, and no spotlight become the man who revived a dying NBA, conquered the 1980s, and defined a new era of basketball? How did a small-town outsider rise to stand shoulder to shoulder with Magic Johnson in one of sport's greatest rivalries? This is the story of Larry Bird, the legend who built his empire not with hype, but with heart, grit, and the cold precision of a man who refused to lose. Larry Joe Bird was born on December 7, 1956, in West Baden Springs, Indiana, but it was the neighboring town of French Lick that shaped him. A place wrapped in quiet hills, abandoned factories, and the kind of small-town silence that made dreams feel impossibly far away. For the Bird family, life was a daily struggle. Larry was one of 6 children raised in a cramped home where bills piled up faster than opportunities. Money was scarce. Work was unstable. And childhood often meant stepping into adulthood long before you were ready. His father, Joe Bird, was a veteran battling personal demons and financial pressure. His mother, Georgia, worked multiple jobs just to keep the household running. In this environment, Larry learned 2 things early: responsibility and resilience. Basketball wasn't a hobby, it was an escape. The cracked concrete behind the house became his training ground. Hours alone with a ball became his sanctuary. There were no fancy gyms, no trainers, no crowds. Just repetition. Relentless repetition. But beneath the boy's growing talent was a storm no one saw coming. When Larry was still a teenager, his father, overwhelmed by hardship, took his own life. The tragedy shattered the family and marked Larry forever. It was the moment innocence vanished, replaced by a determination carved out of pain. This wasn't the beginning of a superstar. It was the birth of a survivor. From the quiet streets of French Lick, from the shadow of grief and poverty, Larry Bird carried one truth with him. If he wanted a better life, he'd have to fight for it alone. Larry Bird's path to greatness did not begin with triumph. It began with doubt. After a standout high school career in French Lick, he earned a spot at the prestigious Indiana University under legendary coach Bob Knight. But the culture shock hit him like a wall. A poor kid from a small town suddenly thrust into a massive campus, surrounded by students with money, confidence, and direction. Larry felt out of place, invisible. Within weeks, he dropped out. Most thought that was the end of his basketball dream. Back in French Lick, he worked as a garbage collector, groundskeeper, and dishwasher, humbling jobs that paid just enough to survive. But every night, he returned to the court. He practiced not for fame, but because the game never stopped calling him. Then came the turning point, an opportunity at Indiana State University. Smaller school, closer to home, a team that needed a spark. And from the moment Bird stepped on the court, everything changed. His game was quiet but devastating, precise footwork, flawless shooting, unbreakable discipline. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But he dominated. By 1979, Larry Bird had transformed Indiana State into a powerhouse. leading them to an unprecedented 33-0 season and a historic NCAA championship appearance. There, under the brightest lights in college basketball, he met his soon-to-be lifelong rival, Magic Johnson. Their clash wasn't just a game. It was the moment America realized they were witnessing the rise of something bigger, the birth of two legends who would reshape basketball forever. Bird didn't win the championship, but he won the nation's attention. When Larry Bird entered the NBA in 1979, the league was struggling. Ratings were down, arenas were half empty, and the sport desperately needed a new heartbeat. Larry Bird didn't just arrive, he ignited a revolution from his very first season with the Boston Celtics. He played with a sharpness and intensity the league hadn't seen in years. There was no adjustment period, no hesitation. Bird stepped onto the parquet floor and instantly became the anchor of a franchise longing for rebirth. He won Rookie of the Year, lifted the Celtics to a 32-win improvement, and by his second season, Boston was back where its history demanded, hunting championships. And then, the rivalry that defined an era took full flame. Magic Johnson in Los Angeles, Larry Bird in Boston. Two players, two coasts. Two legacies intertwined by destiny. Their battles weren't just about basketball. They were cultural events. Televised wars that pulled the NBA out of the shadows and into a golden age. Every meeting felt mythic. Lakers' fast break flash versus Celtic blue-collar grit. Magic's charisma versus Bird's cold precision. Through the 1980s, Bird dominated the league with a lethal combination of fundamentals and fire. 3 NBA championships, 1981, 1984. 1,986 3 consecutive MVP awards, 1984. 1,985, 1986 countless clutch shots, game-winning plays, and moments etched into basketball folklore. And there was the trash talk. Quiet, cutting, devastating. Bird didn't need volume. He needed accuracy. He told defenders where he would shoot, and then made the shot anyway. He played with a confidence so fierce that even his rivals admitted, when Larry looked at you, you knew the game was already over. Off the court, Bird's fame soared. Endorsements, magazine covers, interviews. Yet he never embraced celebrity. He remained the same small-town kid at heart. Uneasy with limelight, but unstoppable on the court. By the mid-80s, Larry Bird wasn't just a star. He was the face of the NBA, a symbol of excellence. A leader whose presence elevated everyone around him. This was his empire, built not on flash, but on mastery. For all the glory that defined Larry Bird's rise, the price of greatness came for him earlier than anyone expected. And it didn't come from scandal. It came from pain, relentless, unforgiving pain, behind every heroic performance, behind every MVP trophy, behind every iconic moment on the parquet floor. Larry Bird's body was breaking down piece by piece. His back, worn from years of hard labor in French Lick and the brutal physicality of 1980s basketball, became his silent enemy. By the late 1980s, the pain was constant. Not occasional. Not manageable. Constant. He could barely sit, barely tie his shoes, barely sleep. Reporters saw him lying on the locker room floor before games, trying to coax his spine into cooperation. Teammates recalled days where Bird could barely walk, yet when the buzzer sounded, he stepped onto the court and delivered performances that defied belief. The media began to question him. Was he finished? Had the legend burned too bright, too fast? But there was another layer to Bird's struggles, one tied to the weight of fame. During the height of the Magic-Bird rivalry, he became the subject of a narrative he never asked for, the Great White Hope. A label the media pushed relentlessly, framing him as the white superstar who could challenge a league dominated by black excellence. Bird hated it. He rejected the racial framing, calling it stupid, divisive, and completely wrong. But he couldn't escape it. Every headline, every TV segment, every comparison pushed him deeper into a spotlight he never wanted. Then came the injuries that sealed his decline. Bone spurs, nerve issues, and finally, the infamous moment in 1988 when he shattered his face diving for a loose ball, a symbol of everything that made him great and everything that was destroying him. By 1992, the end was inevitable. Larry Bird, the man who played through agony with the stoic fire of a warrior, announced his retirement. It wasn't scandal in the tabloid sense. It was something more human. A story of a legend whose body gave out long before his heart did. Retirement did not dim Larry Bird's fire. It simply redirected it. Most athletes step away from the game and fade into nostalgia. Larry Bird stepped away and became even more powerful. In 1997, he returned to basketball in a new form, not as the unstoppable forward from the 1980s, but as the head coach of the Indiana Pacers. The transformation was stunning. Bird, a man known for quiet intensity and razor-sharp instincts, carried those same qualities into coaching. He demanded excellence without theatrics, respect without shouting. The result? One of the most remarkable rookie coaching seasons in NBA history. He led the Pacers to the Eastern Conference Finals, restored the franchise's identity, and won Coach of the Year, proving that his mind was as elite as his jump shot. But he wasn't done. Bird transitioned into the front office, becoming president of basketball operations for the Pacers. There, he built teams defined by discipline, grit, and unselfish play, teams that reflected his own identity as a player. Under his leadership, the Pacers became a perennial contender, respected league-wide for toughness and intelligence. Then came the moment that placed Bird in a category all his own. He became the only person in NBA history to win MVP, Coach of the Year, Executive of the Yara trifecta of greatness, unmatched by any player, coach or executive as the years passed. Bird embraced a quieter, wiser public persona. No spotlight. No drama. No hunger for celebrity. Just a man devoted to the game, to his team, and to his roots in Indiana. His comeback wasn't about returning to the court. It was about proving that greatness evolves. Larry Bird's legacy reaches far beyond statistics, trophies, or highlight reels. He is one of the rare figures whose presence changed a sport not just for a moment, but for generations. He revived the Celtics. He resurrected the NBA, and alongside Magic Johnson, he launched a basketball renaissance that paved the way for the global superstars who came after. But Bird's true impact lies in how he did it. He wasn't the fastest, the strongest, or the flashiest. He was the most relentless. A master of fundamentals in a world obsessed with flair. A competitor whose willpower alone could turn games and sometimes entire seasons in his favor. Today, his influence is visible in every player who values precision over spectacle. Every team that builds around discipline and teamwork. Every coach who teaches that the smallest details decide the biggest moments. Larry Bird's journey is proof that greatness isn't about where you start, it's about how fiercely you refuse to stop. If you enjoyed this story of one of basketball's true legends, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more untold journeys, more real stories, and more Hollywood icons brought to life.